Hey guys, Sean here and welcome to the F1 Word. Now, usually at this point on a race Sunday we'll be doing the race reaction stream. However, in light of the events over the weekend, it felt right to take some time with you and with Jonty as well to reflect on everything that happened at Spa. Of course, that will include some race discussion. As I'm sure most of you are aware, during yesterday's Formula 2 feature race, there was a truly horrific is the only word incident at the top of Eau Rouge and Radion involving a number of cars, most notably Juan Manuel Correa and Anthoine Hubert. Correa was taken to hospital and underwent surgery, having suffered fractures to both his legs as well as a minor spinal injury. At the time of this stream, his condition is still described officially as stable. However, tragically, Anthoine Hubert succumbed to his injuries and passed away yesterday evening at the age of just 22. Motorsport has lost an incredibly talented young man and an undoubted bright star of the future, and he will be sorely missed by everybody in the entire motorsport community. My condolences, thoughts and prayers go to his family, his friends and his colleagues at this truly tragic time. Rest in peace, Anthoine. Anthoine Hubert, who passed away tragically again at just 22 years old yesterday. Devastating. As is always the case with motorsport, though, the race did go on today. A Formula 3 race was held this morning. Obviously, F2 was cancelled out of respect for Hubert. Formula 1 went ahead as planned. A number of drivers, obviously very emotional, and it's a very difficult day for them. How they managed to hold it together today, I have no idea, and I have nothing but respect for every single driver that hopped back in a car this weekend after that. It's incredible. I don't know how they do it. I agree with Lewis Hamilton's sentiments. They don't get enough credit for what they do for us as fans. If you know, they go out and risk their lives every single weekend to entertain us, and that is just absolutely amazing. So they all deserve massive credit. So we're going to start this stream. Obviously, we'll talk about the race as well. But I'm going to pull Jonty in. I need a moment to gather some thoughts. I'd say good afternoon, Jonty, but I think the best thing to say is just hello, mate.
Yeah, hello, everyone. It's not the most pleasant circumstances, but the F1 guys have provided us with a good race, which I think is a fitting tribute. It's probably the best way of looking at it.
Absolutely. It was a good race. I think it was a good race. And like you say, fitting tribute. Is there anything you wanted to add on my emotion at the start of the video?
I'd probably have to say we obviously saw a lot of support for Charles because obviously he's been friends with Anthoine for quite a long time, but also just spare a little thought for Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, and I can't remember who else. It's just gone out of my head. But they've been friends for 14 years. They had their first race together. And Gasly in particular, they lived together for 6 years in the same room while they were at boarding school. You know, so look further than the family. They've got real friends that they're missing.
Yeah, there's a few of you in chat saying horrible weekend. I know I'm not going to name names, but I was talking to a number of younger F1 YouTubers yesterday, some people as well that follow the channel who are younger, who have never seen anything like this before live. So I think we forget that sometimes, Jonty. We went through Senna, didn't we? And other deaths as well, and we saw them more or less live. But for a lot of young fans, this is a completely new I hate using the word, but experience. So if there is anybody out there struggling, don't forget there are plenty of people to talk to, and the F1 word is always here to listen as well. So definitely reach out if you need to talk. There's plenty of people over on Twitter as well. Good people. There are some good people out there on social media, so definitely go and check them out. But as I said earlier, there was a race today, as I say, Formula One. I don't know how they do it, but they just keep going. So we'll have a quick look at the full result from today. Don't expect too much organisation in the stream. It's probably going to be all over the place, and there'll just be a few reflections on the race. But Charles Leclerc took his first ever Grand Prix victory. I think I speak for a lot of the motorsport community when I say that is probably the most fitting victory today. How that guy continues to smile is beyond me. Fantastic drive as well. Only just ahead of Lewis Hamilton, despite looking pretty comfortable for a huge chunk of the race. And Valtteri Bottas rounded off the podium for Mercedes. Quite a way back in the end, actually, Bottas, 12.5 seconds. Vettel made a second stop. He did lead for a while, but was given team orders. We'll talk about that in a moment. I think a few were surprised. Sebastian Vettel in fourth place there. Alexander Albon. I mean, wow. Fifth place. If you needed any justification for Red Bull's decision, I know it's only one race, but that's probably it. Sergio Perez in sixth, Daniel Kvyat in seventh, Nico Hülkenberg in eighth place for Renault. Somehow, I couldn't tell you how he got there. Pierre Gasly in ninth place for Toro Rosso. I think he'd be very happy with that on his return to that team, even though he did end up bottom, apart from Verstappen, obviously, of all the Red Bull runners. Lance Stroll took the final point for Racing Point. Lando Norris. I don't want to use the term heartbreak because I think that just doesn't seem to work now, but gutting for him as he retired on the last lap from fifth place. He'd driven so brilliantly and totally deserved driver of the day. Kevin Magnussen 12th for Haas with Romain Grosjean just behind. Miserable day for them, really. They just kept going backwards. Daniel Ricciardo 14th, George Russell 15th, Kimi Rikkinen 16th, Robert Kubica 17th, Antonio Giovinazzi 18th. And then your retirements were Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen. Actually, on Verstappen, we'll kick straight off with that one, Jonty. Quite a scary moment for him. Went up the inside of Kimi Rikkinen into turn one on the first lap. Rikkinen turned in, not expecting Verstappen to be there. Rikkinen up on two wheels, nearly flipping the car, and then Max Verstappen no steering into Eau Rouge, straight into the wall. You know, it's every accident, every incident today made you cringe, but that could have been very nasty for Max.
Yeah, and possibly a little foolish by Max. Not so much on the contact, because at turn one, super tight turn one, that we frequently see stuff like this around the source. But the way he was going down the hill towards Eau Rouge, testing the steering, and you could see something was broken. And he kind of kept his foot planted, which I was very surprised by. He wasn't quite as full throttle as the rest, but he certainly wasn't backing right off, which was very, very bizarre. The drivers usually know instantly whether something is right or wrong with the car.
As he was going straight on in Eau Rouge as well, very nearly wiped out Raikkonen, didn't he, as well? That was quite a scary moment on board. Do you think a bit of frustration from Max because of that incident? And he's been so good, hasn't he? I'm not going to criticise him for it too much because he's been so good this year and he seems to find that out, and it's probably his first major mistake of the year. But a little bit of frustration, maybe?
Probably, yeah. That's probably a fair assumption because there's been those power unit issues with the battery deployment all weekend that he's been complaining about all through practice, all through qualifying. So he's certainly sort of been on the back foot, and obviously qualifying didn't go as well as it could have. So there was definitely some frustration there.
Yeah, it's a tough weekend, really, for Red Bull. We'll talk about Alex Albon a little bit later. He kind of gave them a little bit to smile about today, but I think they're going to struggle in Monza as well. I think it's kind of highlighted for me, Honda have still got a long way to go at the moment. I think they're still a long way off. They keep talking about being closer to Ferrari and Mercedes, but I think today has shown that they've still got a bit of work to do. This weekend has shown they've still got a bit of work to do, but again, I can't criticise Honda compared to where they were 12 months ago. They absolutely would have loved this a year on, and they're getting it, so can't really complain too much. We'll talk about Charles Leclerc. Very emotional victory, a difficult victory for him, really. Obviously lost a very good friend yesterday. Like I said earlier when I was going through the results, how he keeps smiling, how he keeps going after everything he's been through is baffling. But to get that first win for Ferrari, even under the circumstances, it just felt, I say under the circumstances, it just felt fitting, didn't it?
Yeah, and you could tell in the way he was driving that only the car completely blowing up was going to stop him getting the win there. He was absolutely flying. I mean, just look after the pit stops when he took like a second and a half out of his own teammate when they had both pitted. It was a crazy amount of time that he made up.
He got a good start. It was helped by, I think his run down the Kemmel Straight was helped by the fact that Vettel got passed by Hamilton. Otherwise, I wonder if Vettel might have challenged. But I think Martin Brundle said it in commentary. Even if Vettel had got the run on him and got past him on the first lap, I think Leclerc's pace all weekend, he'd still have gone on and won that Grand Prix. But one of the biggest moments of the race, certainly at Ferrari, team orders, but Vettel being instructed to let Leclerc go. Now, I know obviously Vettel was on the older tyres, Leclerc was on fresher tyres, he was quicker, so from that point of view, it makes total sense. But the feeling around F1 is that Sebastian Vettel is the number one driver in that team. He has that number one contract. So we did sometimes, very rarely see it in the Schumacher-Massa, Schumacher-Barrichello, Schumacher-Irvine days. But I was as surprised as you, I think, John T, to see Ferrari instructing Vettel out of his way. I mean, it made sense, didn't it, strategically, but still a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked. I turned to look at Mrs. My gob up wide open. I'd never heard them do it this way around with this pair. I know, sorry, there was one incident when Vettel was completely out of position, but not when they were on similar strategies. But this was just madness. I've never seen them just switch their allegiance like that before.
Yeah, like I say, totally makes sense for strategy. I do wonder if it's a defining moment for Ferrari now. But they've got some tough calls to make coming up in that battle between their two drivers, because Leclerc is 14 points behind Vettel now in the championship, so that's still doable, and it'll be intriguing to see. I know speculating about the future, but it'll be intriguing to see what Vettel does if his teammate beats him, as Ricciardo did, whether he might decide he's off. A lot of talk about Red Bull keeps cropping up because he keeps breathing near Christian Horner, so everyone thinks he's moving there. I just wonder what it means for his future. But I think quite a defining moment at Ferrari. But I think in terms of this race and performances, I think Leclerc will be delighted to take that win. Could have very easily been his third, as Martin Brundle said in commentary, but actually it isn't, it's just his first. But I think Vettel will be really disappointed with fourth place. It's quite a tricky one, because when I was watching the race, I found myself sort of almost screaming at the telly, why are Ferrari not bringing Vettel in, get those fresh tyres on, and he can then chase down the Mercs with plenty of laps and get second place. But as a lot of people will have pointed out and noticed, if Vettel hadn't have stayed out holding Hamilton up, Hamilton probably would have won the race. So, although I don't think that was part of Ferrari's strategy, I don't think they went to the race going, well, let's pit Vettel early and then get him to hold the Mercedes up. I don't think they thought that for a second, but the way it played out, it turned out to be quite a good strategy move.
Yeah, it did. But it still comes down to that thing of, obviously you're saying, if they pitted him earlier, he would have had the fresher tyres and would have had the time to use them, assuming that he could, because his pace after he pitted was nowhere, which I thought was very, very strange. But you also got to think that if he did pit that earlier, would that force Mercedes into a reaction? Yes, it worked out right that he was there to hold up Merc behind him. But if he had pitted earlier, they couldn't have just ignored it. Maybe they'd have tried to cover it off with one, but something would have happened. They couldn't have just let it go like Red Bull did in Hungary, which was a massive mistake, as we saw.
Yeah, it's I'm not a strategist. I don't have a team, but I feel like if I was in Ferrari's position, the second Hamilton got past, I'd have called him in and got the tyres on, even though he didn't really have the pace on those tyres. He did set the fastest lap on them. I don't know whether they turned things down, but they were a used set us off, so they'd only done a couple of laps though. But I thought it would have closed right up on Bottas, but he didn't really. 13.8 seconds back in the end on Bottas, so a long way off. But Mercedes almost... The story from commentary, I think it was Karun Chandok was saying, Mercedes were going to pull Hamilton in, and then Vettel came in and they left him out. And that strategy looked like... That was initially like a good call for Mercedes, because Hamilton was in that little battle thing they've got at the bottom, that little battle graphic they've got on the world feed about the percentage chances it was going up and up and up that he was going to beat Vettel by staying out longer, but that eventually fell away. So initially that looked like a really smart move, but the more Hamilton stayed out, I kept thinking, well, Mercedes is just throwing this away. Ferrari have got this 1-2 in the bag. And then obviously it just flipped. It was there wasn't much overtaking at the front. We got Vettel passing Hamilton, we got Hamilton passing Vettel, but there wasn't a huge amount between the four. But particularly between that top three, the strategy side of things, that strategical intrigue we keep talking about, John T, was really, really good. And both teams played a strategy that at one point looked like it was a mistake, but actually turned out to be the right move, which was quite weird, because usually when you've got two teams that close together, one team makes a massive, quite frankly, cock-up of it, and the other team nails it. But both seem to do strategies that look wrong, but ended up being right. Am I the only one that thinks it's a little bit weird or unusual? Especially for Ferrari getting something right.
No. It's a fair point, and I think it's entirely possible that they both got it wrong, which cancelled each other out and just relied on the raw pace.
Yeah, I just found it fascinating. But I think Mercedes, will be quite happy with that result. A bit of damaged limitation on the track where Ferrari looked set for a 1-2 finish. Not too disappointed, I don't think. Obviously, Hamilton wants to win. Bottas quite a way off in the end. Is that the Bottas contract effect, or is that just he's up against one of, if not the best drivers on the grid? And as soon as Hamilton decides he's going to give it, as they say, hammer time, it's difficult to keep up with him.
When he's on it, you're never going to catch Hamilton. Certainly not Bottas. And at the moment, Seb wouldn't, Leclerc might, Verstappen might.
Yeah. Alexander Albon. If you're going to debut for Red Bull, you do it like that. Not just the result. Obviously, he started from quite far down the field anyway, with a number of penalties. Making his way up to fifth is impressive in itself. But that kid got some overtaking done today, didn't he? He did some really good overtaking, particularly a rather risky yet spectacular move on Sergio Perez right towards the end of the Grand Prix. If you didn't see it, definitely go check out in the highlights. I think the highlights are out on the F1 YouTube channel. Right towards the end of the race, he goes for a move. Perez comes across to cover, but Albon, two wheels on the grass down the Kemmel Straight, DRS wide open, keeps his foot in, boom. Manages to take that position. I mean, if you need any justification for Red Bull making their decision, and I mean this with the greatest of respect to him, I do not believe Gasly would have gone for a move like that. I do not believe Gasly would have gone for the move that Albon went for at the bus stop. He was aggressive today, and that is what Red Bull want from their second driver. And he's picked up the points when Verstappen's failed to finish, which Gasly wasn't doing either. So he's ticking all the boxes, Albon. He's only had one race.
Yeah, he was superb. He really was. That move at the bus stop, I think, was actually the better move because he was so far back to beat him on the brakes. But the move on Perez, I honestly think that was just a miscommunication. Perez thought he was going to go the other way. Albon stuck to it. But I think you're absolutely right. Gasly would have backed off. Albon didn't. He's got that. Maybe it's because it's his first race and he wants to impress. Maybe sort of in a couple of races' time he wouldn't have gone for it. I'm not sure. But it was just a racing incident through to miscommunication. He said in interviews that they were both having a good laugh about it afterwards. There was nothing malicious there.
No further action from the stewards either. So that's good. I don't think. I mean, Perez has his moments, doesn't he? But I don't think he would have done anything that stupid. Agree with you, probably a miscommunication. But I think with Albon, he's kind of done the opposite of Gasly. Gasly obviously had testing in Barcelona. He crashed out. Red Bull saying he never recovered from that, never got his confidence back. Albon's gone into his first race. Absolutely nailed it. Even if Verstappen had finished, he'd still have been sixth, which is still incredible for his first race given where he started. Absolutely deserves all the credit for that. But now he's going to have that confidence to go to Monza and go on to Singapore. Kind of the opposite to Gasly. So I'm really excited to see what Albon can do. On Sergio Perez as well. He's one of those drivers this weekend that we've seen quite a bit of on track, but he still seems to have slid under the radar and ended up in sixth place, which it's kind of very he's another one like Raikkonen and Hulkenberg who tend to do that, don't they? They just sort of get on with it and keep their head down and then pick up the result. But he's been pacey all weekend. That Racing Point looks good, as was pointed out by, I think, Damon Hill or Johnny Herbert after the race on Sky. That car, whether it be a Racing Point, a Force India, a Jordan, whatever, has always gone well at Spa. And they've done it again. And it's another double points finish. I think that's 3 or 4 in a row for that team in whatever guise at Spa. So really solid weekend for Perez. A good weekend for Stroll as well. Got out of Q2, a little bit fortuitous, I know, but he still got out of Q1. And a point for him. So I don't really know what to say on Racing Point other than they were involved in a titanic midfield scrap. And the fact we got to watch all of that, as well as being able to keep up with the lead battle, was brilliant. It's what we weren't getting at the start of the season. That midfield was mental today. It really was a good race all through the field.
Yeah, it was. And just remaining on Albon for a second, because someone mentioned it in the chat, how could we forget that move around the outside of Ricciardo in X?
Of course.
That was epic move. Yeah, who cares if he was off the track afterwards? You know, he was already well past. I did see some tweets of people saying, oh, no, you should give that back. No, he was 20 yards ahead of him. That was an incredible move, and as commentators were rightly saying, one of the best overtakes of the year.
Yeah, and I forgot about it. How good's that? Yeah. No, there was somebody else pulled a move around the outside in a similar place. I can't remember.
I think it was Kvyat.
Might have been Kvyat. There was a lot of wheel banging up at Les Combes, wasn't there? There was some great moves up there. But yeah, absolutely, Alex Albon's stunning move. But like I said, that midfield, the scrapping at midfield, wheel banging, Grosjean and I think it was Stroll. They were banging wheels at one point. I think Magnussen, obviously, was banging wheels with somebody. Amazingly, the Haas boys didn't bang wheels with each other.
That was it. Someone was saying in chat, Gio around
yes.
Ricciardo in Rivage. That was mad. There really was so many great overtakes throughout the field. Stroll mugging Grosjean after he was getting overtaken. That was awesome. And I'm sure Stroll did a great one around the outside into the bus stop as well.
He might have done. There was so much to keep up with. It's kind of like we keep saying, it's a fitting tribute. But I think there was almost a Ricciardo, Zonta, Hakkinen, Schumacher moment, wasn't there, down a Kemmel Straight between two drivers. I think they're both trying to go around the outside of Magnussen in the end, or possibly Ricciardo. But it was just action throughout the field, and it's hard to kind of pinpoint. I missed one of the best overtakes in the year in Alex Albon, Lance Stroll going wheel to wheel with people, a guy who people say can't race. Even Pierre Gasly, he had not every right, but you would have understood if he turned up to Spa, slumped shoulders, especially after what happened on Saturday, go into that race and struggle to get up to speed. And all right, he finished behind Kvyat, and all right, he was behind Albon, third of the Red Bull running cars. But I think he did himself a lot of good with Red Bull and Toro Rosso today with that performance, because he was a lot more punchy than we saw in that Red Bull. Whether that's because he's in the midfield and the pressure's off and he can take those risks, and he was worried about taking those risks at Red Bull. That's something that maybe, obviously, TV will have to ask him. That's not anything I can ask him. But I think he did himself a lot of good today, did Pierre. And I'm pleased as well.
Yeah, well, Toro Rosso's across the board. I mean, we've talked a lot about how good Albon's opening performance is, but I saw mentioned earlier in the chat, and I was going to mention it myself, Albon did 17th to 5th. Kvyat did 19th to 7th.
He did, didn't he?
Which is a stunning, stunning drive, especially in a car which, particularly on this track, many years ago the Toro Rossos were superb in a straight line, but they've dropped off a bit, sort of behind the Racing Points and possibly the Renaults. But he made an absolutely awesome performance today.
What was your favourite overtake out of all them then? Not including Albon. I think because otherwise you're just going to say Albon, which is just cheeky. But yeah, what's your favourite overtake out of all of those? Let me know in chat as well.
Well, if I can't pick Albon's around Ricciardo in X, then I'll pick Gio's around Ricciardo in Rivage.
Oh, damn, I should have outruled that one as well. Well, to be different, I can't. Yeah, if it's not Albon, it's got to be Gio, hasn't it? Stunning move. I mean, even Albon's move in the bus stop, as you say, the better move was epic epic to see, super late on the brakes. It's actually nice to see wheel-to-wheel racing, and also not punished by the stewards. I know we've had this for the last few race weekends now. We've not seen the stewards getting as involved. It is so good to see that, yeah, fine, Albon was off track, but he was already gone at that point, and he would have been past Ricciardo anyway, and a little bit of wheel banging, no damage done. That was good to see, and it's what we've been crying out for as fans. It's what the drivers have been shouting for, so absolutely brilliant to see. I thoroughly enjoyed that Grand Prix, given everything that was going on. It was still good to watch. Nico Hülkenberg, I'm going to come to you straight. I don't remember seeing anything of him really, Jonty. Yeah, he's a bit like Raikkonen, as I said about Perez as well, just kind of ended up in 8th place. I know he got involved in that squabble with his teammate after Ricciardo was struggling after 41 laps on those tyres. Poor Danny Rick. But yeah, I don't remember seeing an awful lot of Hülkenberg unless I've missed something.
No, he had a fairly... Well, you say he had a fairly lacklustre race, but there he is, P8. You know, that's a decent result, especially after the races that they've had recently. But that's where we usually see him when they have an all-right race. It was just pretty much away from all the dramas and all the scrapping. But with regards to Ricciardo, what were they doing? Seriously. What the hell was that strategy?
Didn't make sense. I mean, he took quite a bit of damage on the first lap, didn't he? He got involved in that, and I think he hit Stroll. Although commentary kept saying Hülkenberg hit Stroll. I'm absolutely certain that was Ricciardo hitting Stroll, but maybe I'm wrong. But he got quite a bit of a thump there, so pitted early. I think they were just trying to get into the end on the mediums. That was never going to happen. I know it was cold, it was cooler temperatures, and the hards wouldn't have worked, but if they were going to try that, they'd have been better putting the hards on, because at least they would have got to the end, and he was slow anyway in the end on the mediums, lost so much time, lost so many positions. So if that's going to happen, just stick the hards on. If you're going to be slow anyway, you may as well. But yeah, on Hülkenberg, for me, he can have the most boring race ever. He still came home 8th place, didn't he? So that's yeah.
Yeah, just one of them, just one of those stealth races, similar to the race that Bottas had, to be quite honest.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that, is there? If they bring home the result, that's absolutely... If he has one of those races and finishes 17th, then you criticise him, but 8th place, you just can't. I think he did all right. And again, that strategy, like you say, Jonty, was baffling from Renault. I did actually pull up... Let me just double-check it, actually, because I did pull up the Pirelli thing. I'll have to try and load it up again. Their infographics, I think they're called. I don't know what that means. On who was doing what on what tyres. But Danny Rick... 42 laps officially, obviously, because he was a lap down. 42 laps on the medium tyres. Yet the result on screen is showing that he was soft, medium, soft. But according to Pirelli, he was soft to medium. I seem to recall it was only the one stop. I didn't think he pitted twice.
No, it was definitely just the one.
Yeah, just the one stop on the official live timing as well. So really odd strategy. I mean, they had to try something different, didn't they, after the start? Maybe banking on a safety car is the only thing I can think that may have worked. But even then, it was a bit of a tough one. But we'll talk about the incident on the first corner. But I do very, very quickly, well, not very quickly, I want to talk about Lando Norris. I was gutted for him. You saw him there. You've got all this action at the front, all this drama, this excitement, Charles Leclerc coming around to take his first win. And then just in the foreground, you've got Lando Norris, who had driven absolutely superbly all day, despite the fact that McLaren has been pretty slow this weekend, let's be honest about it. Stayed out of trouble, perfect line into turn one. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but it did this time. Perfect line into turn one, made up 4 or 5 places, I think, into that first corner. Drove perfectly. Car lets him down on the last lap. The team radio has been released. I think it was on social media, the unedited one. I think Jess from WTF1 shared it. Not happy, absolutely gutted over team radio. I think we all were for him. He got driver of the day, Jonty, and rightly so. But superb drive.
Yeah, it was incredible drive from him, especially when you think that McLaren's had no straight line pace all weekend. You know, we saw that in qualifying. They were struggling so much on the power sections, you know, which is why they qualified what is now out of position. You know, they didn't even make it. Did they make? I don't think either of them made it into Q3.
No, Sainz went out in Q1 and Norris in Q2 was 12th, I think. In official qualifying, the actual result, he was 12th. Obviously got promoted through penalties.
Yeah, he started P10 because of the Renault penalties.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, like you say, turn one, threaded the needle like a boss, avoiding all of the trouble. And he was P5 coming onto the Camel Straight, which was ridiculous, and actually keeping pace with those in front of him for quite a few laps. Yeah, they pulled away eventually, and he kind of had another one of those stealth races where he didn't really get involved in anything. But to keep that pace when the cars looked so slow all weekend was fantastic. And then it just gets taken away from him, which I'm sure that now makes 3, possibly 4 races where he's been nailed on for a 5th, maybe a 6th place, and it's been snatched away.
Yeah, it's good. I think it must be that because there was France, wasn't there, off the top of my head? There was Canada, he was looking good, but that weird suspension melting, which I just can't get over, which was very bizarre. Several incidents. He just seems to be the unlucky McLaren this year. It looked like it was going to be Sainz after the start of the season, didn't it? After what happened in Melbourne and whatnot, but very unlucky, Lando Norris. And I think he deserves him and Charles Leclerc deserve massive shouts for driver of the day. But as you've already said, Jonty, you've got Kvyat. He made lots of position. Albon was brilliant. We'll do driver of the day in a bit, but I think a number of drivers. It was a tough call this time around, but like I said, we'll come to that in a moment. I do want to talk about turn one. Probably should have done it when we talked about Verstappen, but whatever, it's fine. Do you think anyone's to blame for turn one with that Kimi Rikknen and Verstappen incident? Because Verstappen is well over to the right as he goes in there, and in 2016, was it 2016 or 2017? That he tried that move and it didn't work on Kimi. It was somewhere around there, but he was well over. Kimi isn't going to spot him in his mirrors. He's turned in to take that corner, which he's got every right to do, not expecting Max to be there. In fact, I think Max said in the post-race interview that Kimi wasn't expecting him to be there. And they've just collided. It could have been very nasty. Kimi very close to rolling, was up on 2 wheels at one point, but I don't think either driver deserves any. I know they didn't get a penalty, but I don't think either driver deserves any massive criticism for that one. It's first lap, 20 cars going into one corner. Something's got to give.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think either driver's properly at fault. You know, there's a gap there. Obviously, he's going to go for it. But Kimi's going to try and cover his inside, and he's also trying to avoid anyone on the outside because there was quite a few people. You know, and it's one of those, as the commentators say so often, 2 into 1 doesn't go. It was just a simple case of that. You know, maybe Max could have backed out, seeing that the gap was going to close, but I don't think you should be putting actual blame onto either of them, to be honest. No. And certainly not penalties.
I don't see how you can. It's not, neither driver has deliberately made that move. Obviously, that resulted in a couple of other drivers getting caught up. Ricciardo hit Stroll. Again, they've just got caught up in the incident, nothing there. So, again, I'm glad that the stewards left that and let it go on. A couple of people in chat, maybe late into the stream, we're talking earlier about Verstappen and that run into Eau Rouge. It was a bit of an odd one, given that his steering was broken, that he went for that, but very close to wiping out Raikkonen. That could have been a very nasty accident. But yes, not great for Verstappen, but I agree. No penalties for that first corner incident for me. I don't know if anybody else will disagree in chat. Maybe think that there should be some penalties thrown out. Maybe some people think the stewards are too lenient at the moment, but I think the stewards are in a lose-lose position, whatever they do, personally. Haas,
Well,
what do you say? I mean, qualifying, decent. Did a good job. Started, made some positions because of the penalties. Started in a good position. But even before the race, Gunther Steiner, the drivers, they were not confident about this race. And they just basically spent the entire Grand Prix going backwards. Yet, despite the fact they seemed to spend a full 44 laps going backwards, they were still 12th and 13th, which I know isn't points, but with all the overtakes that were going on, you expected to see them 17th and 18th. They're in such a mess at the minute. They just cannot get that car to work on race day.
I know. It's so bizarre. Like you said, qualifying, they had really good pace. They were up there, Q3, on merit. And then today, they're nowhere. It's like they're qualifying with a thoroughbred racehorse and racing with a donkey.
I thought Rogro was on for points at one point. I thought it was looking good. He was driving all right, and then it all just sort of fell away. He was the quicker of the two because Magnussen was going backwards pretty much straight away, but Grosjean was, I think, sixth at one point in that fight with sort of falling away from Norris, but Perez was chasing him down. So I don't know if that was because Magnussen was so slow early on that he managed to build that gap, but Grosjean was looking all right. And I thought, do you know what? Maybe if he can deliver this result and pick up some points, do the same in Monza and sort of have a few good races, maybe he can pull himself back into the frame for that, into the fray rather for that Haas seat. But it's probably too little, too late for Roman, to be honest. I'm not going to speculate too much on his future. I think I've seen Dan around in chat, so I don't want to say anything mean about him because I don't want to upset Dan. But yeah, I'm thoroughly disappointed with Haas at the moment, and I think the sooner this season is over for them, the better, so they can focus. I think Gunther Steiner says I think Grosjean over team radio, I think he said 20k down on the straights is what he said. Whether that was an estimate, probably felt like about 60k. And Gunther Steiner said to Sky during the race that there was just too much drag on the car.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they've just gone with the wrong setup. But you would think that would show up more in qualifying. But that said, there is still quite a lot of corners around Spa which need really good downforce. So they could well have made up a hell of a lot of time around, Malmedy, Rivage, Pouin, and all those corners, and then been losing it on the straight, so it balances out. And then in the race, it just becomes more and more obvious when it's not just the one lap. But there's definitely something wrong. I mean, because it's not the first time we've seen this happen. We've seen a few races now where they've qualified well and then dropped away in the race. Maybe there's, I don't know, something in the geometry of how their suspension works that keeps killing the tyres. Because Magnussen wasn't that slow for the first 4 or 5 laps. And then all of a sudden, his car went into reverse and everyone was overtaking him.
Yeah, I just don't know what to make of Haas. I don't know what to say. I'm just looking at Flying Tigers comment in chat there saying it's almost as if Grosjean gave up mid-race in his career. It kind of feel a bit like that for both the Haas boys, didn't it? Like his anger over team radio is totally understandable. That guy is on the brink of losing his F1 seat. He needs a car that can help him to deliver. And even when he is performing well, which he was doing to a point today, the car lets him down. So with a driver like Hülkenberg available, it's going to be a very interesting a week. Apparently there could be an announcement next week. I don't know whether that's going to be something that's left now. I don't know. We'll see. But who else can we talk about? We've got a few, haven't we? Kimi Rikknen. We've talked a bit about him. With that first corner incident, kind of damaged the car, didn't it? I think he made 3 stops in the end. So kind of just a bit of trying to do damage limitation, but still only ended up 16th. But injury, start of the weekend we're talking about yesterday, John T. Question marks over whether Ericsson was going to replace him. We'll never know, other than what Kimi says, whether that injury affected him today, because the damage on the car was probably too much for him to be able to challenge anyway. Yeah,
we know, we've seen it so many times over the years. Once you've got floor damage, you're pretty much knackered. Especially on a car that's not one of the quickest ones. They are going to need every ounce of downforce they can get. So Kimi's race was done on turn 1, which is a shame because he had some real pace in that car. His qualifying was stunning.
Yeah, I agree. Ended up, he started 6th, but qualified 8th, I think. But that's still pretty stellar for a guy that was possibly not fit enough to race at the start. That's just so Kimi, though. It's just so Kimi. His teammate, Giovinazzi, guy needs a result, performs, aggressive in the overtake, making his way through the field, looks set for points, puts it in the wall right at the end. I think I said to you, John T, my exact words to you, I think, were there had to be one more, didn't there? And that's how it felt when I saw Gio in the wall. There just had to be one more this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, there's been quite a few beyond the big one. We had another one in the F3 this morning that was concerning some. So it kind of had to be rounded off at the end. But the problem with this one, this is all driver error.
I didn't see the replay. So you'll have to explain it to John T, to anyone that's not seen it. I missed the replay of it and I've not seen one yet. Crystal Racing saying he thinks Gio might have had a puncture.
Possibly. I mean, there's no way we'll ever know now because the wheel was in pieces. But yeah, it was definitely driver error. It was clear he'd lost it, and he just kept his foot in. There was nowhere to go.
Yeah. It was on for points, wasn't he, before that? I can't remember where he was running. He was running quite high up, and I thought, I mean, at one point he was running sixth. I know he hadn't pitted, and I thought, this is what he needs. This is what he needs, but ends up in the wall. I'm gutted for him. Just whether driver error or puncture, whatever, I'm still disappointed he couldn't bring home the result. Would have been good for Alpha as well. I think they're hearing soon, isn't it? In the next week or so, or next couple of weeks, on whether or not they're going to get their points from Germany back. Which will be gutting for Kubica fans and Kubica if they do. But Gio needed them this weekend. 1 point compared to his teammates, 3 million or whatever Kimi's on. But he's a long way off, isn't he? And he is under a little bit of pressure. I think I heard today, it's like I've got a source sat next to me. I heard on TV today that Hulkenberg might be in the fray for an Alpha seat. Obviously, that's going to come down to Ferrari, isn't it? But Raikkonen and Hulkenberg at Alpha wouldn't be a bad lineup, but Gio's just another one of those drivers under pressure, isn't he? And needs to deliver, and this could have been the catalyst for him, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah, it's true. It is a shame, but I wouldn't be sad to see him go. There's quite a few I wouldn't be sad to see go because we've seen a lot of these new young drivers come in and they've spiced things up quite dramatically. You know, it wouldn't be a bad thing if someone like him went, especially when he's had 9, 10, 11 years now. It's really been a while and done nothing with it.
He's one of those drivers that I seem to have heard a lot about for a hell of a long time, and then his first appearance was obviously covering for Wehrlein, and he's not been brilliant this year. I don't think he's been awful. I think it gets forgotten by some that he is up against Kimi Rikknen, but he should be closer than he is to Kimi Rikknen. There's no doubt about that, but we'll see going forward in terms of driver lineups. It's going to be interesting. What I will say about young drivers, by the way, interesting point you made there, John T. As always, of course. But what the young drivers as well have done is they've brought a whole new personality to the grid. This is nothing against the older drivers, but they're kind of the almost certainly with like Vettel, again, nothing against him, the old breed of driver. But you've got your Lando Norris turn up who's streaming all the time. You've got Max Verstappen doing stuff like that. Alexander Albon is about as grounded a young man as I've ever seen. He's just his first weekend in a Red Bull and he's like, yeah, we'll see how it goes. You think, wow, no stress at all. This new breed of driver, more please, I guess is what I'm saying. They're just so much more. They're more willing, aren't they, to talk to the press and to get involved with fans, and that's what Liberty want. That's what us fans want, and I think that's what F1 needs.
Yeah, it really is. We've seen how well it can work. Just look at the whole, like you mentioned already, Lando, and pairing him with Sainz, who still isn't exactly old. You know, he's still relatively new. They're getting on like house on fire and making a real great connection with the people watching, young and old. You know, so that can only be a good thing. And if something's good, why not get more of it?
What I find quite funny is that when Hamilton, Vettel, Raikkonen and co all eventually retire, which they will have to do eventually, although, as I keep saying on the channel, I'm not sure about Kimi. I wouldn't be surprised if he's still racing till he's in his 90s, quite frankly. But they've all got to retire eventually. And I've totally forgotten the point I was going to make. No, I haven't. The likes of Max Verstappen, for example, and let's have a look through the list, Carlos Sainz are going to be considered the elder statesman of the sport very soon, and they're still, when your Hamiltons and Vettels retires, they're still only going to be 23, 4, 5 years old. They're still kids.
Yeah, but we see this in so many sports. It just comes down and down and down as the pressure and the access goes up and up at younger ages. That's what makes the big difference, I think. And the fact that you do have so much more in sponsorship and the likes now than you did many years ago. You know, there's a reason that so many people were racing in their 40s and 50s in the 50s and 60s, because everything had to be paid for themselves. They had to either work or inherit and what have you to get it. There wasn't really that much in the way of sponsorship deals. Now there is. So if they can get people that are far more marketable, they will come through quicker.
Absolutely.
Although you're exactly right about Kimi. I mean, let's be honest, he's going to be 75 years old, and Sauber will still be getting penalties, but not from the FIA. They'll be getting them from the police because he's speeding in the lorries that he's driving, carrying the cars.
Oh, that would be so Kimi, wouldn't it? I can't race the cars, so I'll race the trucks. Or by the time he retires, maybe hover trucks. Who knows? Back to the Future and all that. I know they didn't have hover trucks. Well, they did. The dicks have hover cars. Sean, seriously, it's an F1 stream. What are you doing? Stop talking about Back to the Future. Bloody love them films. Carlos Sainz, gutted for him today. Didn't get off the line very well. An issue with his car. I did read what that issue was, and now I've forgotten. I'll just go and have a look at Carlos Sainz's Twitter, because he tends to be quite open on there. But disappointing for him. That's Spanish. I ain't going to be able to read that one. Just says lost power at the last sector of the formation lap and couldn't even take the start properly. Two very tough DNFs we didn't deserve. Italy next, we move on. I think the pace wasn't in that McLaren. This was going to be one of the tracks they struggled at. So it was about damage limitation. It didn't really work out in the end for Carlos. Feel a bit for him, but didn't really get going from the start. But good news for Williams. Very good news for Williams. They continue their... brilliant run of consecutive finishes. They still have a 100% finish record this season with both drivers, despite Kubica blowing up yesterday. They still get that record because they finished the race, so good for them. As many of you will point out in chat and probably in the comments after this video, of course you can have a 100% finish record if you're not driving particularly quickly, but I think they can be very happy with this weekend again. Williams, a team that were expecting to struggle this weekend, and again in Monza, yes, okay, it's only 15th and 17th, but all right, with the problems they had, they did finish. Each driver finished ahead of an Alpha, so it's something for them to look at, and it's that finishing record. I honestly, John, I don't know what to say about Williams. We didn't see much of them, did we? But again, they've finished the race. It's about all they can do.
Yeah, it really is. But like we say, finish first. First you have to finish. And they are getting quicker. It's taking a while, but they are genuinely getting faster. Just look at today. On such a long lap, and, a track that requires a hell of a lot of power and straight line speed, but does still need the downforce, they're only a lap down.
Ian DR says, we saw their pit stop. Yes, we did. Crofty jinxed them. He said, who's this coming into the pits? Brundle said, I think it said Kubica. And Crofty says something like, this will be good to see, because these guys usually deliver really quick pit stops, and the front right wouldn't come off. Which is just typically Crofty jinxing Williams like that, so they couldn't even get that right today. I think Williams... What tracks do you reckon, Jonty, they're going to be good at? Because they'll be poor at Monza, or expected to be. I can't see they're going to be good around Singapore, because that's going to need a pretty decent aero package on that car to succeed, downforce-wise, isn't it? It's a street track. Sochi is sort of a street track and very high speed as well, so I can see them struggling there. Is it going to be... Are we looking at maybe Austin?
I was actually thinking, bizarrely, that Monza's probably their best bet.
You reckon?
Because they have got the Mercedes power unit, and it's one of those tracks where they can just throw caution to the wind, trim out every last bit of wing they can, strip off as many bits of barge board as they possibly can, and go for absolute maximum straight line speed, and just, we'll deal with the corners when we get to them. You know what I mean?
I do, and I love the idea of Williams being like, our car's terrible. If we take lots of bits off it, it might make it better. Let's remove all the terrible stuff from the car, and we might actually get a decent car in the weekend. But yeah, maybe Monza. I'm not...
Because it's got that simplicity.
Yeah.
There's not loads of complex corners, sequences of corners, altitude changes or anything like that they need to worry about. It's just flat out straight line racing for most of the track. It's got the highest proportion of full throttle of anywhere. It's going to be their best option.
Andrew Hickling in chat says Japan. possibly. That's a good test of a car, Japan, isn't it? A little bit of everything. Pretty high speed track though, still, especially with that snaking up the hill. I'd not thought about it. No, I'm not sure. We'll find out, won't we? I don't know if anybody really cares whether Williams are going to be good this year, but there's a conversation let's talk about with them. But in chat, very quickly, pop a surname. Who was your driver of the day? I'll read some out in just a few. John T, for you, who was your driver of the day?
Oh, Kvyat by a mile.
Yeah, with Kvyat. Yeah. Did you say 19th to 7th? For Kvyat. Something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, he started dead last on the grid because Kubica started from the pit lane. Yeah.
That's an impressive drive. I'd be tempted to say Norris, but if anybody who has followed the channel for a while knows, I like to try and go against the official driver of the day if I can. It's tough to because he drove really well. I'll go Albon then. I think he drove superbly today. His aggressive overtaking, that move, one of the overtakes of the season that I totally forgot about. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that one. And his first race for Red Bull handled the pressure all weekend beautifully. So I'll say Albon, just to be different. But let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. If chat wants to load for me, which I'm sure it will. There we go. Ins H says Kvyat. Wald says Norris. Legacy says Norris. If we could pick some others out. John Whittaker says Albon. Albon or Kvyat. Kvyat, Norris, Kvyat, Leclerc or Albon for 242 Turbo. Leclerc definitely deserves a shout for his drive today. He was very good. Sergio says Bananas time 350. Cracking name. Checo definitely deserves a shout. Mikkel Sorensen says K-Mag. Him being slow gave us some action, didn't it? So I suppose he deserves some credit for that one in some respects. Albon or Leclerc says Finn. Jamie, Albon, new team, new car. Ash Cash 147. I've got that wrong on stream before. Albon. Norris. It seems like it is Albon, Norris or Kvyat with a bit of Perez thrown in there as well. And Leclerc. Crystal Racing says Kubica. Bloomy says Checo, good afternoon, mate, or good evening, mate. But I think, just see if there's anybody different. No, doesn't look like it. So very much Albon, Norris, Kvyat, and like I say, a sprinkling of Perez and a bit of Checo as well. So all in all, I think, John T, it wasn't as dramatic as Germany. It wasn't maybe as tense until the last few laps as it was in Hungary throughout that Grand Prix. Maybe sort of somewhere between Austria and Silverstone in terms of excitement levels, but it was a good race, and it was obviously, given everything that happened over the weekend, the perfect tribute to Anthoine Hubert, and also kind of the perfect race for just after the summer break. Far better than last year's Belgian Grand Prix, I think it's fair to say.
Oh yeah, a lot better than last year, but I did actually enjoy last year's, so it's a tricky one because we still had stuff going on and there was still some good moves.
Yeah, it was all right. All I remember from last year is the first corner incident, really, and then Vettel, all the people kicking off that the safety car came out just after Vettel had overtaken Hamilton. But yeah, it was a good race. I enjoyed it, and I think we all needed that after the weekend. I was debating, by the way, whether or not to discuss safety today, but I think personally I share the sentiments of Cyril Abiteboul when that was put to him by Simon Lazenby. I think as a community we need a time of mourning and reflection, and then we can look back at this maybe next weekend or in a couple of weeks' time and look at safety. But at the moment, I think the right thing to do is to remember Anthoine Hubert. And obviously I should say as well, and I do need to say this, it was tragic what happened on Saturday, but make sure we're all thinking as well of Juan Manuel Correa and his family. He survived, but he's suffered a couple of fractures to his legs. He's got a spinal injury, and he, rather heartbreakingly, has got to live with the fact that it was his car hitting Hubert that probably resulted in the death, and the poor guy will have to live with that, and he did absolutely nothing wrong. No blame whatsoever lay at his door, but he has got to live with that. So some thoughts with Correa as well as we round off this weekend, absolutely.
and with Giuliano Alesi.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it was his either suspension failure or tyre blowing that caused him to spin, leaving the other guys with just nowhere to go and no time to react. I can't imagine what he feels like at the moment, especially when he was completely untouched by it.
A huge shout out as well to the marshals and the medical crews. I know they've done it a lot on TV this weekend or today. Very quick to the scene. I think Correa's family saying that they believe that the actions of the marshals and medical crew on scene were a life-saving intervention. It's hard to sit here and say that. How can I word this? He's got fractured legs and he's got a spinal injury, but he's very lucky that he's still with us after that crash. So, but definitely thoughts with Correa. Obviously thoughts with Hubert's family as well. It's a horrible weekend, but as I've seen on social media, I am stealing this line from TV as well. It's the dark side of our sport, isn't it, John T? We love the racing, we love everything about it, but unfortunately, every now and again it comes along and bites us all very, very hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said in a tweet, that's the 11th that I've seen happen. And there have been more during my time that I didn't see. So we can always say it's too many and we can keep trying to improve it. But as long as everyone is always looking for that next innovation that can improve it, then given time, these things will happen less and less. I don't think it'll ever be completely unavoidable.
Oh, no.
But as long as everyone's working towards that at all times, it will happen less, which can only be a good thing. And that's taken from the standpoint of someone who's actually been at a track when it's happened. So.
Also, just want to say, I'll take some of your questions in a moment. I'll do super chats as well, but I do also want to say I'm very proud as well of the motorsport. The vast majority, of course, John T, there are still the one or two absolute bellends, but I am so proud to be part of the motorsport community on a weekend like this because everybody's come together. The majority are very supportive of each other. People are offering support to everybody, and I'm very proud as well of the F1 Word community. Oh, soppy sod. But I'm very proud of the F1 Word community as well. You've been brilliant on social media to each other, to me, and yeah, I think we've all come together. It is sad. I keep saying this, it's sad that it takes something like this to happen for the community to come together and put aside their rivalries, but at the end of the day, I often find that a lot of the rivalries we have are just tribal instincts, aren't they? You've got a favourite driver, you're going to banter each other, but it's really touching that everyone's come together this weekend. But I'll take some of your questions before we go. Sort of end on a lighter note, I guess. If you've got any, I'll do the super chats first. Andras says, man, I feel for Correa. If he recovers, he might have the thoughts of it was him who killed Hubert. Same with Alesi, not sure how to deal with that. That was what we were talking about as well. Thank you very much, Andras, for your contribution as always. And Max, hey, thank you for your contribution as well. Says, love the channel, Sean, keep it up. No, thank you for tuning in and getting involved, and thank you for your contribution as well. Massively appreciated as always. Let's see if we've got any questions in here about the race or in general, just anything.
Well, just one other point. As you're looking for a question with regard to the motorsport community, I think there needs to be a big shout for every single fan who was actually at Spa today, because I don't know if you saw it, but going out, all of the medical and safety staff going out this morning to get to their points around the track, they had standing ovations the entire way, which is a wonderful thing to see. It was really, really a good thing to see this morning. All anyone wanted to do was give respect to those who were involved.
Absolutely. I'll echo that one. I think I've forgotten who did. Somebody sent me a video on Facebook. Who was it? Justin, who was down at the bus stop yesterday. He sent me a video this morning over on Facebook. Sorry I didn't reply to that one, mate. Bit busy at the time with everything, but sent me a video of that first thing. So really touching, really, really touching. Let's have a look at what we've got from the questions. If the Sky Vettel bashing becoming too much, says Adam Winch.
Yes. Well, no, actually. No, it's not Sky's Vettel bashing. It's Sky's still bias towards an extremely popular certain British driver. It drives me mad. It genuinely does. They always keep going on about him. It can be people completely miles away, fighting for the 11th and 12th, and they'll still mention Hamilton for some reason. He's incredible, but when he's not got anything to do with something, don't keep dragging him into it. There are other drivers,
Hamilton? Oh, I thought you were talking about Jolyon Palmer. Sorry. Sandeep wants to know who did the most overtakes. That's a very good question. If I were taking a guess, I'd say Kvyat. But that's obviously including pit stops, but on-track overtakes.
Ooh.
Albon 1, 2, 3, 4 off the top of my head that I can think of that we've kind of gone over already. Do you know there could be a number of drivers out midfield that had 3 or 4 overtakes each, if not more? Because it was just that close, wasn't it? Stroll did well, actually, as we said before. So, see what people are saying in chat in response to that one, because I'm not 100% sure. On track, Albon says Red Hacker. Could be.
It's definitely one of those who've come through from the back.
Yeah. Kvyat gained the same number of places as Albon, didn't he? Says John Whittaker. It probably is those two, because they were sort of together, weren't they, at the start, and made their way through. Yeah, well, I might count that up and pop it on Twitter at some point and see if I always say that and then forget when I finish the stream. But I might try to. We'll see. Like I say, yeah, Kvyat, Albon. Bloomy says, has it been 1 year since Vettel's last Grand Prix win now? Yes, it has. Belgium last year. And curiously, I saw it might have been in chat or it may have been on Twitter. So if it was in chat, apologies that I've forgotten your name. But it was pointed out somewhere that he is now the 3rd most recent Ferrari winner. Because obviously Leclerc won today and Raikkonen won in Austin and Vettel won in Belgium last year.
Yeah, that was on Twitter. I saw that as well.
That's quite staggering, isn't it? For a guy that was challenging for the title for a huge chunk of last season, and the season before, not won for a year. A win at Monza would give him one hell of a lift with the Tifosi behind him. But the problem for him now is he's got a teammate who has won a race, knows he can win a race. The luck is on his side. I did wonder when Hamilton was chasing him down if I was going to have to start this stream with something like Charles Leclerc is destined never to win a Grand Prix, if Hamilton had got him on the last lap or something. But a win at Monza could be just what Vettel needs. But then I thought that the performance in Germany was just what he needed.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You stole my point.
Oh, sorry, I'll go back. Hang on, yeah.
Yeah, I honestly thought that performance in Germany was going to be right for him. Was it 20th to 2nd? In a madcap race with changing conditions, which are traditionally his worst. It was impressive. Very, very impressive. And it seemed to do nothing for his confidence.
The FIA steward says at the top of Radion, some fans lit candles and put their circuit tickets down there. I didn't see that, but lovely touch. Do you think Albon's pace today is what we will see more of this season? Asks Nexu. I think he's got as I said earlier, it's the perfect thing for him now, isn't it? He's got that confident start. He's got that good result under him, so now he can really push on from here. Whereas Gasly at the start of the year had those crashes in Barcelona, so a shaky start. So I think Albon's going to do all right. I think he'll keep that seat next year, John T. I've got to be honest. I think they'll give him the 9 races. He'll do all right, and they'll keep him for next year. And with a 5th place today, I'm just going to check. I didn't do the standings before this because I've had all sorts going on. But where is he now? What does that give him a lift to? Alexander Albon. Have they updated these yet? He now moves to 10th now on 26 points. Gasly is 6th on 65 points. He has very much got a very good shot of finishing 6th. If he finishes 6th in the championship, he's definitely got that seat for next year, given he's only had 9 races.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I've got a feeling that this isn't going to be a one-off. It's going to have done such a massive boost to his confidence that next week, as we go out in Monza, I'm gonna predict it right now that we're going to get a Noah's Ark finish. 2 Ferraris, 2 Mercedes, 2 Red Bulls, and he won't be miles away from Verstappen. He'll be behind, but it won't be by a minute like it was with Gasly.
I wonder if we can get a podium before the end of the year. I'm looking at Mexico in particular. It tends to be a good track for Red Bull, doesn't it?
Mexico, Singapore.
Yeah. That'd be a story, wouldn't it? Just a good question, actually. From McGath88, what are your thoughts on the 4 quali races planned for 2021? We touched on this yesterday, didn't we, John T?
I'm not opposed to trying something new. Quali isn't the problem. We know that. Everyone loves qualifying. It's the best format we've ever had. But if it gives us more actual racing, that's a win-win, surely. Especially, take it even further. Have a quali for the quali races on Friday in just one practice session.
I personally would love a revamp of Fridays. Just so I can sit here and shout bingo. Because I'm having that square. I am not getting into this. I'm having that square. So if they do that one, I get bingo. But yeah, I think actually it's the 4 races for 2020, isn't it? That Ross Brawn was saying they want to try things next year for 2021.
Yeah, which is exactly the right way to do it. As I said on streams in the past, in a lot of ways, 2020 is a throwaway year. Everyone's going to be focused on the 2021 rules and development of their car. So next year, I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see a lot of, surprise results from midfield teams snatching it up when they got the chance. That really wouldn't surprise me, especially when those teams are going to have to rely a lot more on what they're getting as a result of this year, money-wise, to put into the development for 2021, whereas the top teams are doing it now. Even though the rules haven't been completely finalised, they are developing it now with what they already know.
Yeah. I'm going to do a couple of quick fire questions and we'll end it. Put yourself in Red Bull's position. John T, fill in the blanks, wants to know Albon or Kvyat for next year?
Albon.
I want to say Kvyat. I do. The story. You know what I'm like with this kind of thing. Kvyat back to Red Bull. The story's amazing, but I can't help but... Sorry, Kvyat fans. Can't help but say this. He's had his chance. Let's give somebody else a go, and that's what they've done with Albon. So I think Albon for next year is the way to go. Absolutely. And let's get one more super quick one in. Actually, I'll tell you what. PKM has just said Hulkenberg. It's not really a question. But what I will say, where will Hulkenberg be next year, John T? Do you think he is heading to Haas? I think that's where he'll end up. I think this Alpha talk is fine, but only if Ferrari are willing to give up their seat or Kimi decides to retire. So I think it will be Haas.
If it's not Haas, it's nowhere.
I seem to think we discussed this yesterday. A lot has happened, as I'm sure you know, since yesterday's qualifying watch on, so I can't quite remember. But do you think he's had his chance? Time to let somebody else in?
Yeah. Even with the talk of possibly taking the Geo seat, you've also got to consider F2, F3, they're still going on. Mm. There's a certain famous child in F2 right now, and you have to consider that both Haas and Alpha are part of the Ferrari stable.
Very true. Ooh, that's John T teasing us all before we finish the stream. I'll tell you what then. Last time in chat, super quickly. Where will Hulkenberg be next season? If you just drop a team name, or if you think he'll be out of the sport, just put out. What do you reckon for next year for Hulkenberg? I think if he's going to be anywhere, like John said, that'll be Haas. And I think for them, out of everyone that's available, he's probably the best available option. I can't. Grosjean has said, to almost quote him, he's confident he'll keep his seat for next year. I want what he's having. Because I am not confident he's going to be anywhere near Formula One next year. A lot of people straight away saying Haas. Let's see if I've said anything different. Bloomy says Williams. Warren M says Williams. A return to Williams. Final sort of back to where it all started.
Possibly, but becoming increasingly unlikely unless he's bringing a hell of a lot of personal sponsorship money with him. As we've had the news reports, I don't know if they started yesterday or today, that a significant portion of Williams Advanced Engineering is to be sold off to raise funds for Williams Racing Engineering. So they need the money, and they're not going to take someone who is going to probably be demanding a fair amount of wage after the time and experience he's got.
And that's why I'm certain it's Latifi in that second seat.
Yeah, absolutely, because he's got a hell of a lot of French backing behind him. But Canadian backing, sorry.
Yeah. Kieran Robson says FE with Porsche, but I think Porsche have confirmed their lineup. Lotterer and... oh, Christ. Another driver. I can't remember his name, sorry. But I think they've confirmed that one. Alpha says McGath. But I think Haas seems to be the most popular shout. It would be interesting to see him back at Williams. But yeah, definitely agree with you, Jonty. They need the money, and that's where it's going to go at the end of the day for Williams. But we are going to leave it there, mate. It's been a tough weekend, a very tough weekend for everybody, but that race was sort of just what everyone needed, I think. It's not going to take our minds off everything, but it was a fitting tribute, as we said right at the start, or as you said right at the start. So tough weekend, but... I hate the phrase, but the show must go on, and it always does in F1, and it's Monza next.
I didn't catch the end of that.
I was just saying that it's a horrible thing to say, but the show must go on, and next up it's Monza.
Yeah, it's very true. You know, it's one of those things you just have to swallow it down, and maybe it might take some people much longer to deal with, but you have to accept it. And here we come back to Italy, and like you say, the show will keep going on. I'm sure it's going to happen again at some point in the future, but we just need to be ready for that when it does.
Yeah, I agree with what you said earlier. It'll never be completely safe. These guys are doing 200 miles an hour plus. Doesn't matter how safe you make it. These things are sadly and tragically going to happen. It's just fortunate that it doesn't happen anywhere near as much as it used to, which is something, it's not really a positive, is it? But it is a positive, but it isn't if it's still happening. But you know what I'm kind of getting at there. But I think in some ways as well, very quickly, Jonty, it's kind of good that Monza's next week. I know people aren't going to forget. People are still going to pay tribute. It's still going to hurt. People, like you say, everyone grieves in their own way. People mourn in their own way. People have a right to mourn in their own way, and they take as long as they take to get over it, whether it's a driver, a team principal, someone in the media, or a fan. It takes as long as it takes. But with Monza around the corner, it's not... It is about moving on, isn't it? And it's kind of the perfect time. At least we're not waiting 2 weeks to see all these guys racing for us again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know this is real life, but in day-to-day Joe Public life, for a lot of people, the best way of dealing with things is just going back to work as if things were normal. And this is as close as it gets to that in the world of F1. Yeah,
absolutely. But we'll leave it there, John T. It's been a pleasure as always, and hopefully Monza will deliver and make it 6 in a row. Good races. Not bad considering France.
Yeah, that's very true. We had a couple of lackluster ones around that, a bit earlier, but it's certainly picked up. And I was worried it would drop off again after the break, but it's still going. And Monza will be great as well.
Definitely. But thank you very much, mate, and I'm sure I will talk to you shortly.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and thanks for coming along, everyone, and I hope you all feel a bit better in the morning.
Lovely, mate. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you to John T. Thank you to you guys as well for coming along. Like I said, it's been a rough weekend, but as a community, we'll get through it together. Once again, final time, thoughts and prayers, obviously, with Juan Manuel Correa and his family, and of course with Anthoine Hubert and everything there. Absolutely awful, absolutely awful. But the racing continues in Monza, so Monza's a good track. I enjoy Monza. In terms of the channel, the debrief will be coming. I don't know just yet whether that will be tomorrow or Tuesday. It will either be out tomorrow or Tuesday. 100% I will be doing it. Just if it's not up on the channel tomorrow, it will be out on Tuesday morning. So bear with me on that one. Other than that, it's all the build up to Monza, starting middle of next week, the preview on Thursday, and then next weekend, race watch-alongs, qualifying watch-alongs. They're all back, as was supposed to be happening this weekend, but obviously, given the circumstances, the race watch-along didn't happen today, but it will be back from next weekend, next Sunday. So fingers crossed, we'll have a nice, exciting race to sink our teeth into for that one. Don't forget, in the meantime, there you can, of course, follow me on social media. The links to Twitter, to Instagram, and, of course, to Facebook are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.